All right, so in this video, we're going to look at how to add some basic HTML structures to our simple web page. And today we're going to focus on lists and tables. So I've pulled back up my template that I used for a previous video. And from here in the main section, I'm going to add a couple of lists. And there's two kinds of lists that we can add in HTML. There's an ordered list and an unordered list. Now, the unordered list is the kind that has bullets. They have the same bullet type on every list item. And then their ordered list can be numbered or have letters to indicate that it goes in a particular order. So let's look at some examples of our unordered list. So for the unordered list, you use the tag UL, so that stands for unordered list. And each of the list items inside that list gets coded with LI. So again, notice good practice is always to have both the structures, the opening tag and the closing tag, so you don't forget them. And then for each of our list items, then we're going to have LI, and then we'll have a closing LI at the end. And then inside of the LI tags, you will put the text that you want to appear in the list. So, for example, maybe I want a list of pets. So we can have cat, and then we can have dog, and we can have bird, oops, and so forth. However long the list is. Now, these are not in any particular order because it's an unordered list. Now, if I go ahead and I save this, then I can open up the file in the browser and see what it looks like. And so if we go to the browser, we can see that what we've added is an unordered list here with bullets as the list structure. Now, if we go back to our list that we were creating, then if I change this to OL instead of UL, then ordered lists work exactly the same way as unordered lists, except that they give you a list structure like 1, 2, 3 or ABC as the structure type instead of the bullets. So I'm going to change this and save it. And then I'm going to reload my page. And then we can look at that. And so now we have 1, 2, 3. So one important thing to keep in mind when you're doing your list types is that, particularly with the ordered list, you do not type the 1, 2, 3. That will be taken care of by the HTML. So let's go back to our code. Now we can also change the style of our list. So either change the bullet type or change the numbering type. So let's make a copy so we can look at both of them at the same time. So we'll make one an unordered list and we'll make one an ordered list. Now, both of these can be altered by using a style command. List style type colon, and then changing, for instance, the kind of bullet type that we would like for the unordered list. So we have basically 4 options. The default is a disk, and then we can also have something like a circle or a square in order to change the display. So a circle will be an unfilled circle. And And then for the OL, for the ordered list, we can use, for the standard types, we can just use type equals and then specify the first element that we want of the list. So for instance, if I want A, so ABC, I can type a capital A here and then it will change that. So let's save this. And then let's reload our page and look at that. So we've changed the solid disk into a open circle for our unordered list, and we've changed the 1, 2, 3s into ABCs in our ordered list by doing this. Now there are lots of other options that we can use. So we could use, for instance, instead of capital A, capital B, capital C, we could use lowercase a, or we could use Roman numerals, capital I. We could use lowercase Roman numerals. And the default, of course, is equivalent to using 1 as the leading number. Now, there are also options that you can use if you need to reverse the order, and other kinds of things like that. There are also ways that you can include other kinds of somewhat non-standard list types. And to do that, you would use a code that is actually similar to the unordered list. So you would use list style type, and then you would specify what you wanted as in terms of the options. So for instance, there are several options that you can use. Maybe you would prefer to use Greek letters, for instance. So let's try this. Save. And then let's reload our page and look at it. And so here we have our squares in our unordered list. And of course, if you use none, then that will take the bullets away entirely, just have this list structure without the bullets. And here, because I use lower Greek, so these are using lowercase Greek letters, there is a list of other things that you can use, including Hebrew letters or Japanese letters and other kinds of things. You can Google for the exact list of things that you would prefer to use instead of the standard 5. But these ones will have to be coded using list style type, and then you would have to spell them out, as opposed to the nice shortcut type equals A1, etc. All right, so that is our list structures. So now what we want to look at is table structures. And so I'm going to go back to a blank page. And the table is going to be coded up inside table tags, not too surprisingly. Table, and then closing the table. Now, inside the table, you have to specify both row and column information. And so what I thought it's useful to think about this in an actual grid structure. And so what I set up was an Excel file that we can look at to look at how the code is going to work and what it will look like. So let's switch over to my HTML or my Excel file so we can look at this structure. Here we go. So inside the table tags, you need to set up your row tags, and then inside of them, your TD tags, which stand for your data. Now, inside the row tags, you can only put TD tags, or we'll talk about the TH tags in a second, but each row starts and ends with a TR and a closed TR. If you want to put any text in it, you have to specify the cell, and the cell are the TD tags. So if I want to build this particular table, then each row will start with a TR, Then inside of that, I will have these TD tags, and between the TD tags, I will put the thing that I want to appear in the table. And then I will repeat that for each of the rows that I have to set up. So let's go look at that, and we'll set up just the basic table with no fancy cell merging. So let's go back to our code. So inside the table, I'm going to have a TR tag, and then I'm going to close the TR tag. Now, exactly how you set up your breaks and your line carriage returns in the code in order to make this easier to see, then that's up to you. But to start with, you open a row and you close the row. And then with the TD tags, you're going to add the cells. So TD opens a place where you can type a cell value. So I'm going to type A1, and then I can close my TD tag. And that is my first entry in that first cell, row, column. Then if I want to do the next one, then I have another TD tag and then another entry for the content. And then finally, TD for a 3-column table, like so. Now, then if I want to create another row, then these would now become A2, B2, C2, A3, B3, C3. So again, each row is coded the same way. And if I save this, and then I open this up in our browser, let's look at this. So our table now appears like so. Now you can add style to this using CSS, which we'll talk about in another video. But the table is generally going to be sized according to the size of the contents in the table. So if by default, if you don't add any other information like changing the width or the height or things like that, or the padding, then by default, it will just size it based on the size of the text that you use. So if one column has more text in it than another, then it will be wider or narrower than the other. All right, now, if I want to have one of these entries look like a header, then I can, instead of using a TD tag, I can use a TH tag. If you change anything to a TH, you have to change the closing tag to TH also. And what this will do is that we'll treat these THs like headers inside the table. So if we save this and then reload our page, then what it does is it actually bolds and centers in the table. So the headers in the regular body do not center things automatically when you use a heading, an H1 or an H2 tag, for instance. But in the table, TH tags will center in addition to bold. Now we can't see that because the columns are so narrow, but that does also happen by default. Now, the TH tags are not the only thing that we can do. We can also change over to merging cells if we want to have for instance, a header that goes all the way across the table, or merges 2 cells together. Instead of being only 1 column wide, it's 2 columns wide. And so, for example, we might want a structure that looks like this, where the cells where A1 and B1 originally were separate, we merge them together into a single A1 cell. And when I do this, if I use the TH tags, you'll be able to see the A1 is not, it's not just that B2, the B1 tag is like the text is missing. It's actually going to center it as though these were 2 columns wide. Now, this call span is what we're using to do this merging of columns. Now, this will only apply in the row that you use it in for the call span. So let's try this and look at our table. So we'll go back to our code, and I will take out my B1 cell because we're going to eat it up with the A1 cell. Then inside my tag, and again, this works for TD or TH, I add call span equals 2. And then let's save this and then go look at our page. And so you can see below the A1, there is still A2 and B2. The columns are still there, but the A1 is now centered in the middle of those 2 columns because it's the TH tag. But these 2 cells in the top row are merged together as one. Now you can do the same thing with the rows. If we go back to look at our structure, if you use a row span instead of a call span, then what it's going to do is it's going to merge the A1 and A2 cells, so the one right below it together. Now, where this can be tricky is that you're now affecting rows relative to each other. And so you're going to have to remember that the A2 is already accounted for, the A2 cell, and you're going to start the next row with B2, and you'll have only 2 cells left. So this can become a little bit more complicated, but it's useful to display it out in a table like this because it helps remind you, like, when you do these coding, what have you used and what do you still have to account for? So let's go back to our code. So for this one, I'm going to put in row span, but I'm going to need my TH tag for B2 back, for B1 back again. I'll actually just do TD because it doesn't really matter. You can kind of mix and match them if you want one to be more like a header and one not to be. Close the tag. So that still has to be there because in row 1, you're not combining the columns anymore. You're combining the rows. What you have to get rid of is the tag for A2 in the next table. All right, so let's save, and then let's go look at this. So notice again what happened here is merging the 2 rows where A1 and A2 used to be, and A2 doesn't exist anymore because it's just A1 now. And then it's because it's a header tag, it's centering it in the middle and bolding it. But the 2 columns B1 and C, the B column and C column still have all 3 lines of code on them. So when you started the second row, even though you took off A2, because that first cell was already taken up by the merging of the row span, it starts in the second column when you add that text. But then the third row, when the row span is finished, is just all 3 standard elements. So this can get very complicated. You can do different combinations of things, different combinations of TH and TD. And as I said, you can adjust the width of these columns by using things like style sheets and specifying the width. Typically, you want to do it in terms of percentages of the table, or it will just default, as we see in our example, to just the width of the text that's involved. And so if you make the text wider, then the columns will be wider.